Cool. So we're going to launch an instance on AWS first. So for that, we go AWS on Chrome or whatever browser you want, and then look for that, and then sign into your console. This already has my credentials in there. And I believe there's a project on Inertia 7 already, so let's bring that up for those of you who want some documentation. So Kaizen was kind enough to actually put this together today. Thank you, Kaizen. And it has a lot of documentation there, so you guys can kind of go through that. And I'm hoping I can put this video on that project if that's okay. So, alright, so now that we're logged into AWS, we go to Services, and we look for EC2, right? EC2 is like their bread and butter service, where you can launch infrastructure as a service, right? As you can see, I have 7 running instances. I prepared in advance an instance in case that my presentation failed and, I needed a backup thing. So, okay, so let's just go ahead and launch instance. So click that blue button there, and we're gonna look for the operating system we're gonna use is Ubuntu 16.04 LTS. And then we're gonna pick their default general purpose T2 micro. We're going to go ahead and configure instance details. And we're not going to do anything with that. We're just going to keep everything as default. And we're going to go ahead and click Add Storage. Here, you see a little bit of the storage configuration. What's up?
Can you slow down a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Do you want me to go back?
Yeah.
Okay, go back a little bit. Previous. Is this good?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we're picking the size of the instance that we want to use, and we're going to go with general purpose T2 micro. This is free eligible. I don't get free instance anymore because I use this a lot. Sounds good? So you go ahead and click on the bottom right button over there, configure instance details. So we click that. Here there's a bunch of default configuration, and we like that, so we're not going to tamper with that. We're just going to click next, add storage. We're also not going to tamper with this configuration because we do want 8 gigs for storage, and we want to be able to delete on termination, right? It's fine. So we're going to click add tags, and we're also not going to mess with that, although we could. But, simple, just click next. Configure security group. Here's where we do some actual configuration. So depending on the kind of instance that you want to, and does everybody understand what I mean by instance? Does anybody not understand what instance means? Okay, cool. So here, depending on the kind of instance that you want to spin up, you may configure different protocols to talk to that instance, right? So by default, AWS gives you SSH, right? Which means you can SSH into the console, you can configure the instance via the terminal, it's all happy, right? What we're going to do is we're going to enable all traffic because we're badass and we want to be able to talk to the instance in whatever way we want, right? And we're going to go over here and say anywhere for source. And then we're going to review and launch. So now this is a summary view of our instance details. We're going to hit launch. And this is where it gets a little tricky, right? So just as when you log into any account that you may have like Facebook or Gmail or whatever, you need a password to be able to log into your account. When you SSH into an instance, you need a password, right? And that password is your key pair. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new key pair. and we're gonna call it whatever you want, right? So I'm gonna call it cluster underscore demo, and then I'm gonna hit download key pair, and it's downloading, and now I'm gonna launch the instance, right? So my instances are launching. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and view instances, and there it is, and it's launching. So while that happens, we need to be able to configure our key so that we can use it to SSH into our machine. Does everybody understand what it means to SSH into a machine? Does anybody not understand what it means to SSH into a machine?
Let's just say I don't.
Okay, so what it means to SSH into your machine, if anybody is familiar with the terminal, so let's open up the terminal. Right now, I'm on my terminal, and I am in my computer, right, in this machine physically. So I can list the directories or files that I have. You know, I can touch a file, and it's there, right? File format, cool. I can make a directory, I can delete a directory, but it's all within my machine, within the file structure within my machine. What it means to SSH into a machine is that I virtually transport myself into the other machine, and I can tamper with that machine, and I can install software, I can put code in there, I can copy things, I can do all sorts of things, right? It's really cool. You guys can and should read more documentation on SSH if you're not sure what it is. But we're going to SSH into our instance now so you guys can see. Alright, so we just downloaded our key, so let's go mess with that. So I'm going to open the directory that contains my key. So I'm going to move it over to my desktop, and then I'm going to go into, not here. All right, I'm going to go into my terminal, and I'm going to cd home, so that's change directory to home. And then I'm going to ls, and for those of you who are trying to follow this, I would recommend that you make a directory called my projects with camel case. So to do that, you would do mkdir my projects and then hit enter. I already have a directory like that, so I'm not going to do that. It's already there. Okay, so now I'm going to cd into my projects, and I'm going to ls, right? And I have another directory called keys inside of my projects, right? So you can see it's that one right there. This is a directory. So I'm going to go ahead and cd into keys, and I'm going to ls again. And as you can see, I have a bunch of keys in here, and I have the key that we made last presentation with TickButt, which is pretty funny. So I'm going to go ahead and open this directory. So to do that, I'm going to type open and then dot. It opens the current directory with Finder, which is really nice. I'm going to go ahead and drag the key cluster demo into the keys directory. Make sense? Is everyone following me? Is anyone stuck? Cool. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm going to blow this up, and I'm going to ls again. And there it is, cluster underscore demo .pem. Right? So let's go ahead and do ls -lia, and that's going to show us more information about the files in our current directory. So we need to remove some permissions from this file to be able to SSH into our instance with this key, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to type chmod 400 and then cluster demo. And what that's going to do is it's going to do some magic that I'm not going to get into right now. But essentially, it's restricting the permissions of that file so that you can SSH into your instance with such key, right? So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to do ls lia again. And if you compare this line to this line over here, you can see that I've removed the permissions here, right? And there's only read permission here, right? It's awesome. So now our key is ready to be used to SSH into our newly launched instance. So in order to launch into our instance, we just go to our newly launched instance, and I don't know which one I just launched. Which one did I just launch? Launch time. Here we go. Yeah. So this is my last instance that I launched. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and I'm going to click connect. Right? So that gives me a nice command here that I can use at the bottom. That we can use to SSH. This is really nice, but if we want to SSH into our instance, we're going to have to type this every single time to our terminal, and it's a pain in the ass. So I'm going to show you a nice way to create an alias to be able to SSH into your instances very easily, right? So the way that we do that is we cd into home within our directory, and we ls, right? Always ls. And then there are some hidden directories here, some hidden files, right? So I'm going to hit ls-lia. As you guys can see, there is a directory here hidden called .ssh. Does everyone see that directory on your machines? Does anybody not see that directory on your machines? Cool. All right. So we're going to go ahead and cd into that directory. So cd.ssh. Then we're going to ls. And there are some rather cryptic files in there. It's fine. We're going to go ahead and tamper with the config file, right? So we're going to do vi, for those of you of Vim lovers. Fuck Emacs. Love you, Nate. So we're going to go ahead and vi into config. And as you guys can see, I already have some other aliases to launch into other instances, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way down, and in order to be able to use Vim, in order to insert, you have to press I.
Wait, what file is that again?
Config.
Inside .ssh.
Correct.
What if we don't have that? Yeah.
You don't have it?
Just have one. It's like no host.
No hosts? All right. Yeah, so if you do not, so does everybody have a .ssh directory? If you do not have an SSH directory, speak now or shut the fuck up for forever.
I don't got one. Should I just create one?
Yeah, so do mkdir.ssh and then cd into that directory. And then once you are in that directory, go ahead and do touch config, enter. I already have a config file, so I'm chilling, right? I'm fine. It's fine. All right. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and open this with Sublime because it's a pain in the ass to use Vim on a Mac. So I'm gonna go ahead and open. Nano is okay, right? It's not great. But don't quote me on that because some people may get upset. Alright. So now, what we do is we just start typing, right? So the first thing we do is type host, right? And then what we want to call our instance when we SSH into it, right? So, does anybody have a funny name that you want to suggest? You guys are fucking boring, by the way. Cluster_demo. Alright, cluster5. So our instance name is clusterfuck. So whenever we want to SSH into our instance, we're gonna say SSH clusterfuck, right? Pretty cool. So now I'm gonna go ahead and why is this all fucked up over here?
Is it okay if we don't have the other stuff?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, so you guys don't worry. Actually, I'm gonna. Yeah, don't worry about having anything in there. You shouldn't.
What directory is that guy in?
So within your home directory, it should be .sh. Yeah. It's kind of weird, right? Because you can't see the directory. It's hidden and it has a dot at the beginning. Alright, so now we're going to specify the internet path to our instance, right? So what we do is with class case, we type host name, and then we need to get the IP address of our instance. To do that, we go to our AWS account, click on the instance, and look to see the details. What we're looking for is the IP address of this instance, right? It's just down here. Is everybody able to locate the IP address of your instance? Is anybody not able to locate the IP address of your instance? Everyone good? All right. So we're going to go ahead and copy that shit, come over to our thing, paste that IP address, and then we're going to specify the user of our instance. Right? By default, when you launch an instance on AWS that runs Ubuntu, the user is Ubuntu, right? But if you're configuring infrastructure that you are managing yourself, you may have set up a different user, right? By default, if you launch Ubuntu on AWS, your username is Ubuntu. So user, Ubuntu, and then we need the identity file, which is the key that we just configured, right? So in order to get that, we go back to our keys directory, right? So I'm going to go home, and then I'm going to go to my projects, cd my projects, ls, and then I'm going to cd into keys, ls. And there it is, cluster_demo.pem. And then I'm going to go ahead and press pwd. That's going to print the working directory. So I want to get this path, right? I want to get this path. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Identity file, that. But this is only the path to the directory that contains the key. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go ahead and get the name of the key as well. Going to copy that and paste it after the directory path. Does that make sense? So this is all we really need to be able to SSH into our instance with our alias.
How did you get the rest of that for the cluster?
Yeah.
Did you
So
get the keys?
yeah. So what's your name?
Wrong.
Rom is asking how did we get this address here before this key. So all we did is we went into the directory that contains our key, and we entered the command pwd, which prints the working directory, right? And then I copied this path, added a slash, this slash here, and then I added the key that we used to SSH. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this file, save the changes, and I'm going to exit now. Right? So let's go to our terminal. I always ls because I have problems. So I'm going to cd into home, and then I'm going to type ssh clusterfuck. And it's going to ask me a rather cryptic question. I'm going to type yes, enter. And now I'm SSH into my instance on AWS. Yay! Alright, any questions thus far? Alright, so let's do it again. To exit this, it's either Control-C or Control-D. So if I do Control-D, I'm now disconnected from my instance. To SSH into my instance, I SSH clusterfuck. Enter. And now I'm SSH'd again. Right? So now we are SSH'd into our instance, and we can do whatever we want. We can set up Spark, we can build a site, and host it there. We can store files, you know, anything. Does that make sense? Any questions?
Can you go back to your config file?
Yeah. So Sean is asking me to go back to my config file. You're referring to the SSH config file, right? Okay. So I disconnected from the instance by pressing Command D. I'm going to go ahead and cd into my projects keys. That's not where it is, sorry. So I'm going to go ahead home.ssh ls, and there's my config file. Go ahead and vi config, and there it is. I can also open that with Sublime or whatever else. Notice that we typed SSH clusterfuck, but if we had changed this to anything else, we would have SSH'd into that. Yeah.
Clusterfuck is unique enough.
Yeah, clusterfuck is cool. Yay. Alright, no more questions? Awesome. Alright.